Frankly, no major surprises for the corporate Inc. except for few finer points that we shall cover, and putting more money in the hands of the individual taxpayers, which has been the ask for many budgets in the last few months. With this, let me come straight to Jaijit. Jaijit, what do you think is the underlying theme of the budget this year in terms of providing the long-term economic growth? We all knew that this will be the last full budget, but we do not see any major announcements on that count in terms of whether how do we want to support the masses, etc. The whole focus is on the long-term development and nation building. Your take.
I think I'll start with the last point that you mentioned, because that even though it is not really a populist budget, but it does address the small portion of the middle class who pay direct taxes. Now that small portion is roughly about 5%, but that impacts 20% of the population, because each household has got 4 people. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it is really impacting 20% of the population, and it was something that was much needed, because as Vishesh just mentioned a little while ago, you can't be disincentivizing the citizens and pushing them out of the country. So you can't really call it populism, but there was something for a large majority of the people. Having said that, it's not just all is well with India. We are at a position of strength. If you look at agriculture, which is the backbone of our economy, we have been growing at 4.6% year on year for the last 6 years, which is tremendous for agriculture, right? It's not a dot-com industry. It's a primary industry. So a primary industry growing at 4.6% is tremendous. Along with it, if you look at the impact it has had on the per capita income, we are now at $2,500 per capita. Mm-hmm. That is tremendous. We have grown, we almost doubled our per capita in the last 6 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. Related to that, because we have prosperity creeping in, the data points show that our tax collections have actually gone up by over 15% last year, in just 1 year, which just reflects the fact that per capita income is really going up, agriculture is really going up, and therefore the tax collections have also gone up. The tax collection going up is also a reflection of the formalization of the economy. Because more and more of the economy has got formalized, people can't escape GST. So along with GST, along with direct tax, we've got a gross increase of 15.5% in taxation. Now, as Vishesh mentioned a little while ago, in terms of even the fiscal deficit, we have been now back on a glide path to come to 4.5% in the next financial year. So by 2025, we should be back on track in terms of having a 4.5% fiscal deficit, which is huge, because it was unbelievable that we will be able to come back to that glide path a year, 2 years ago, given the massacre that was happening from an economic and a fiscal perspective. Lastly, if you look at the inflation figures, which is always a pain, we have seen the inflation figures in our neighboring countries, Sri Lanka going down, Pakistan is rapidly going into a turmoil. We are sitting prime where our inflation has gone down to 5.7% in December. Our tolerance level is 6%. We had reached it massively for quite some time because of the global issues that were there. Now we are comfortably back at 5.7%, which means from a finance ministry perspective, the pressures to get more budgets and to extract from the economy is much more reduced, which is why we see that she's been able to give about 35,000 crores back to the middle class in form of the tax breaks. Why is that important? Is because that 35,000 crores will go into expenditure, into additional money in the hands of people, which will get spent, which will further accelerate the economy. Now, having said that, the economy is still having a challenge from the fact that it's very well entrenched with the global economy. It's very enmeshed. The global economy, as we are looking at it, has headwinds. Now, even though we are saying there's headwinds, there are a lot of firings happening from the big techs, we see the headlines every day. Some of the economies still seem to be coming back on track, like UK and so on and so forth. They seem to be coming back on track. But one of the real fears of the next financial year is the literal headwinds. What I mean by that is significant climate change issues coming in. We have seen 2/3 of Pakistan going underwater, and it's a large country. We have seen significant damage happening in Europe, in China, and so on. So besides the man-made conflicts, which is the war that we're seeing in Eastern Europe, which has led to huge impact on food supplies, on food prices, on fertilizer prices, which also an input into food, into oil prices. I personally feel that there will be a huge impact from climate change in the coming year. That has not really been factored in. Also, when we look at the economic survey, it kind of says that we'll be okay from a current account deficit perspective because the global growth will be low, so the demand on fuel will be low, so the fuel prices will be lower, and therefore our current account deficit will be lower. I'm not entirely sure whether I can buy that argument because if we really want to bring current account deficit, we stop consuming everything, and the current account deficit will be zero. The fact that India itself is 16% of global population, we are one of the largest procurers of energy. Unless we move away from the traditional forms of energy, we will ourselves put pressure on the energy market. And I think we really can't bet on the fact that others will not consume energy as we move forward. Everybody is an energy guzzler. If they stop doing that, then that will have a positive impact on the climate, but we don't see that happening, at least next year. From that perspective, I think another key point in the budget itself was the focus on new industries. When it talked about agriculture, it was not just pumping in money, but it was pumping in money for the agriculture to move into a new direction, which is focused on millets, which consumes less water, focus on non-chemical fertilizers, non-chemical pesticides, and so on and so forth. Similarly, if you look at, let's say, diamonds, it was focusing on environmentally safe diamonds, which do not do damage to the environment, and therefore lab-grown diamonds, and so on and so forth. Similarly, if you look at some of the other initiatives that they were talking about, AI and quantum and so on, was pushing each of the industries into a new industry or the next generation of industry, which is what is really needed for this country, because we are at a position of strength, we can take the chances, and I think that's what the budget tried to do.
So rationalization of the customs regime is primarily in terms of integrating it with the simplification and alignment with the overall theme of the tax policy, simplicity and certainty and predictability, and easier compliances. And when we talk about customs, Jaijit, we are bound to talk about the exports as well. Three themes I would like you to deliberate upon. First, if we are saying that the global economy may see a slowdown, and this narrative keeps changing to my mind almost every month. Till December, whatever we were reading in the Western press was that one after the other, everybody was saying that Europe is going to hit recession and there could be mild recession in US as well. Fast forward by just 30 days, now we are hearing is that probably other than UK, the rest of the Eurozone may escape that. But if it happens, a slowdown or recession, our exports will get hit, number one. We do not know what will be the rhetoric on the oil prices because we have seen huge swings, 80 to 120 and then back. And third, your optimism on the tax collections. I think you are one of the rare economists whom I can call who is very optimist rather than pessimist. So on these three themes, how do we build up? Because financial year 24 numbers of 6 to 6.8% or the base case of 6.5% are built on these themes.
So I think, let me take a different example before I come down to answer your question, is that even though I said everything seems to be hunky-dory with India, if you look at the revenues of cement companies across the board, they are severely challenged.
Okay.
Right now, how do you reconcile that with the fact that house demand is actually going up in the metros? So if the home demand is going up, then there should be more consumption of cement. Infrastructure is being rolled out at a frantic pace, at an unprecedented pace, in fact. But we still see that cement consumption has gone down. So I think getting more data in will be important, and also the fact that there are many unprecedented factors that are starting to play in. Man-made conflicts being one, the natural disasters being the other, and the fact that we are also switching industries completely. We're moving towards future industries, and therefore source of energy also becomes one question mark. If the whole world is moving towards electric or hydrogen, and green hydrogen for that matter, where even the Indian government is significantly betting on, why would there be a demand for oil as we move forward? So those are one aspects of.
But that is 2070 that we want to become carbon neutral.
Sure. But the movement is happening now, right? In the sense that if India and China are one of the largest consumers of energy,
right,
and both are moving out of this trap, whatever slow that movement will be, we foresee that there will be a hockey curve in that movement. There will soon be a large number of people switching over to electric vehicles, as an example. Now, vehicles are 80% consumers of, the 80% refined oil is consumed by vehicles. Out of that, again, 80% is consumed by on the highways, which is intercity. So if you can get the trucks to move into hydrogen, as an example, then there will be a significant impact on how energy gets consumed, right? And therefore, our dependence on oil will be going down. Also, if you look at the conflicts going on, those conflicts run on fuel. And each day there is massive amount of fuel that is consumed from both sides, which is both, in this case, specifically we're talking about Ukraine and Russia. So they are themselves putting a pressure on how much of fuel is needed by the world. And therefore, when these conflicting data come up, because fuel is not bought on a daily basis, these are bought in terms of long-term contracts. When these contracts hit the market, that's when the prices swing, and we really don't have visibility on it. So what my point was that in the coming year, there is a lot of uncertainties from a global perspective, which is why, as you mentioned, there's a swing between 30 days ago where we were saying that the economies will go on a recession. 30 days later, we think that all will be fine. And we really don't know if the Ukraine war continues to happen. Energy from the Russian side is taken off the market. Gas is not supplied to the European Union. There'll be a trouble. What we also see happening is that energy is being routed through other countries and going back to Europe.
I think that's an interesting topic for another discussion, right? A separate discussion.
So I think in conclusion, and answering your question, is that there are too many unknown factors as we move into this year. I think every year the number of unknown factors are going up and up. And therefore, simply putting in a bet that oil prices will go down and therefore will have a very safe current account deficit may not be the wisest thing to do. We need to think of alternate measures if the oil prices go up significantly. Keep in mind that we went into the 1991 situation because of the Iraq war. That was the last push that we had, that we went into the kind of situation we had in 91. So we need to be very careful about how these conflicts impact us.
But I think we are better off in terms of the foreign reserves today,
of course,
where we can withstand some major shocks. Of course, if the entire globe goes into some kind of a slowdown recession, we can't say that we are completely decoupled. There will be some impact on us.
Let me put the foreign reserves also in perspective. We have essentially got 9 months of imports in foreign reserves, and therefore a conflict can lead to those 9 months getting eroded very, very quickly. So we had a smaller economy in 91, and in spite of that smaller economy, we had very little foreign exchange left. But in the context of the economy, we still have only 9 months of foreign exchange in our banks.
Interesting. Jaijit, there has been increase in the spend on healthcare as well as education. In fact, education was a specific point which the Honorable Finance Minister covered in detail this time. I know we will say it's not adequate, we need to do more, but I see a very positive direction in that. What's your take?
Absolutely. I think social infrastructure was critical. We were always being criticized that we're not spending enough on either education or health. And I think on both of these two issues, the government has come out and the budget has come out with actual targets of how much will be spent as a percentage of GDP. I think for health, it's about 2.4% of GDP that we're targeting, and a similar number or a higher number for education. And that also was mentioned in the context of the new education policy, which just means that we are looking at a progressive education regime and not just pumping money in. And given that we have a student population which is about 200 million, which again is almost the same population as entire Pakistan. So we need to educate such a large number of students. How do we do it with our existing infrastructure? We cannot manufacture teachers overnight. So there needs to be a massive digital platform that needs to be brought in. We need to address the issue at a war footing. Otherwise, our demographic dividend will turn out to be a demographic curse. And this is the only decade where either we grow or we become an economy which could have grown but could not grow, because we'll start losing our demographic advantage quickly. Now, if our people and our students are not trained and they're not skilled, and there were specific skills that were also mentioned in the budget, then there will be a lost opportunity for us. So I think it's a measure that was urgently needed, and I'm so happy that the Finance Minister has put a focus on it.
So what you're saying is either we will move in a direction where we become an advanced, matured economy with about 15,000 to 20,000 per capita income, or we could get trapped in the middle income trap which many economies have fallen into.
In fact, it will be a lower middle income, not even be upper middle income. will be lower middle income countries.
Therefore, I think the direction is right, both what the economic survey and the budget are telling us in terms of spend on the healthcare as well as in terms of the education
Absolutely.
sector. Excellent.